everyone, Lou here. You know, as a Tumblr roleplayer, I've seen my fair share of roleplay blogs that I think it's time I do a video that I think is needed in the world of writing fictional stories. That's the do's and don'ts of making an OC. Disclaimer here, I'm not an expert writer. Obviously, I don't have published books on the New York Times bestseller list, but I am passionate about stories and writing, so I'm here to offer advice I've been given throughout the years by fellow writers, and what I've learned on my own. One of the most important things to writing anything is research. To quote Lilo and Stitch,
"Educate yourself!"
For those making an original OC that's not tied to any media, do your research on the kind of character you're making. Making an elf character, research the history of elves and decide for yourself what kind of elf you'd like to make. Elves throughout the literal millennia have had thousands of different interpretations, some underrated, some overrated, so it's important to explore what's beyond just the pointy ears and a long life. As an example, I have vampire OCs. I made them during the peak of the Twilight Mania because I was a dumb 11-year-old. But as an adult, I've basically remade them to feel different than the stereotypical movie vampire. I did my research over the years and basically picked my favorite strengths and weaknesses of all vampires. Also, I was a little inspired by Tokyo Ghoul because that was a little inspiring for vampires, even if ghouls are absolutely nothing like them. Even for human OCs set in a modern world, try to do something to spark a little mystery and excitement for the audience. It's obviously boring having a character work at a retail clothing store all day, right? Why not spark a little something deeper, like maybe they club a lot, or maybe they have some kind of really unappealing flaw on the inside that they try to hide. I think the best example I can give of a story about human characters that have just a lot of really fucked up flaws is the show You. I mean, obviously it's a little over-dramatized, but like, if you tone down a lot of the drama, it can be an honestly really realistic story. Now, if you're making an OC going along with a series that has major opening for OC potential, like My Hero Academia, JoJo's Bizarre Adventures, or Steven Universe, then for the love of all that's good in this world, do your research on the series you're making an OC for. As an example, imagine if you were making a Black Butler OC and you made a sister for Ciel. Fine and dandy, right? I mean, there isn't a ton of wiggle room to make a sibling OC for the Phantom Hive twins, but you could make it work if you thought about it hard enough. Now, you're making a sibling for Ciel. Should you make a backstory where she was kidnapped as a baby, raised as a servant by a family in Black Butler that canonically didn't know the Phantom Hives until Ciel took over, found Ciel years later, and enters into a contract with no clear motivation other than finding the one who kidnapped you? Nope. Here's why this kind of backstory, which is really common for Ciel's sibling OCs, doesn't work in the context for Black Butler. 1. Vincent would have found the child. End of story. The whole reason no one found the twins in the first place is because they were assumed to be killed and Vincent was dead. He's the Queen's guard dog with a gosh damn Grim Reaper as part of his entourage. I guarantee you the man would have found his missing kid or let the entire United Kingdom burn for it. 2. Reread the manga a bit to look into who knew the Phantom Hives and who didn't. I know this one is muddled, but look at the canonical houses to see which ones actually knew the Phantom Hives prior. You wouldn't exactly say Prince Soma kidnapped someone now, would you? 3. The most recent chapters of Black Butler confirm Sebastian is not allowed to make multiple contracts, and even then Sebastian has stated that he looks down on demons who do that. Even then, you have to have the character pull an Alois Trancy to summon another demon, so that's kind of tricky. Now, why the fuck does all this matter then? If you're making a fanfiction with an OC story, then why should you actually give a fuck about it and do some research? If you never do research, it just makes your fanfic harder to enjoy, especially if you're trying to make it a very serious fanfiction. It's extremely important to show your research through that. I mean, what fanfiction is more enjoyable? The one with completely out-of-character interactions and situations, or ones that feel like it could be part of the show? Because I guarantee you that some of the best fanfics I've read feel like they're a part of the show, movie, or whatever other series I love. Now, some may say copying is the best form of flattery, and that may work when we're 6 years old and someone copied our shitty butterfly drawing, but that doesn't really work when we're all grown-ass adults. What I mean is a literal copy and paste of a character. As an example, as a kid, I made an OC who was quite literally just a human version of Sousei Seki from Rosen Maiden, solely because I hyperfixate like crazy, and Rosen Maiden was just one of my major hyperfixations as a kid. Anyway, obviously that's gonna look lame if I wrote her in a serious story I'm publishing. Whether that be a video game, visual novel, fanfiction, or book, that's going to look lame and cheesy. I mean, unless you're Clamp, because Clamp has this weird thing of honoring their previous work, and they're still secretly major JoJo fans, so... Okay, so my best example of being inspired by a character with enough differences where it's not a lame fan service insert is actually Zuko from Avatar and Shoto Todoroki from My Hero Academia. I mean, I don't know if Horikoshi has ever seen Avatar, but considering he's a fan of American media, I wouldn't be surprised. On paper, Zuko and Todoroki are very similar. They both have crazy siblings that manipulate blue fire, a scar on the side of their face that was the cause and effect of their father's abuse, shitty father, their mom is absent due to trauma from abuse their spouse did, and an overly serious but awkward personality. That's pretty much where the similarities end. Obviously there's massive differences here, like the details of how they got the scar. Todoroki doesn't have an Uncle Iroh to help him, he's not evil during his introduction, and, you know, he's got that half Elsa thing going on. It's just enough of a wink and a nod where it's not someone making an overly self-indulgent work of art that pretty much only they might get, or a very specific audience. That's kinda what I mean here. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but 50 Shades of Grey and its heavy influence from Twilight is actually an example of inspiration but not copying. I'm not saying that 50 Shades of Grey is good by any means, it's honestly hot garbage, and I've had more entertainment reading the ingredients list on a bag of pretzels. Grey and Edward are the same on paper, basically the dream man to a desperate housewife in her 40s who forgot what a healthy relationship looks like, but differentiate in one being a vampire and I guess the other being a CEO with anger issues? Whatever 50 Shades of fucked up means. I don't know, man. 50 Shades reads like one of those fan fictions where the writer just genuinely wrote too fucking much, so they didn't have to tag it under porn with plot on Archive of Our Own. Now for the bad examples. I don't really have any because I don't want to call anyone out, but I will say that there have been people who would literally copy and paste entire characters. I knew one person in particular who pretty much made a copy and paste of Kotori Mono from X, even used pictures of her to describe said OC. I mean, I didn't know what X was back then, so I just shrugged it off. This kind of goes for character designs too, actually. For instance, let's say Shinichi Okazaki inspires you to make an OC, right? Well, instead of just taking that entire design, try to look at the fashion that inspired the character. In this case, early 2000s goth punk and British 60s punk were very clear inspirations behind Shinichi's character, so look up fashion from around both areas of time. That's actually what I did with a lot of OCs I have. I like the trait of a character, so I looked up further into that trait for better inspiration. Remember, nothing wrong with sparks of inspiration from something, but taking literally every piece of that inspiration is not good. What better inspiration than you, right? Except I don't recommend taking too much of you when you're writing a character. This, in the worst case scenario, can make you look like one of those bad OCs I read in my bad RP videos, or My Immortal. Considering I've written My Immortal levels of bad things in my teens, trust me, y'all don't want to go down that route. Sometimes I still find myself insert OC bios and it makes me want to die. Anyway, What I highly recommend doing here is taking just a very minor part of yourself and building upon it. As an example, I love figure skating, so I made an OC who's a figure skater. I love researching and reading things, so I made an OC who's a journalist. I'm very soft-spoken in real life, so I made an OC who's an exaggerated version of that soft-spoken nature I have. You get the example I'm giving? As an example in actual media, I think the game Celeste is a wonderful example of a character with self-insert properties, but not enough where it's just the creator shoving themselves into their own work. While Madeline and the developer Maddie both share a name and are both trans, there's obviously some differences here. She actually dives more into this in an article she made talking about how Madeline was basically made as a journey to help her discover she was trans. It's really sweet, and I highly recommend people reading it if you can. Celeste is a great game, by the way, and I highly recommend you guys give it a try. Let me know down below if you want to see a video about it or not. Anyway, back to this category. It's fine to take a piece of yourself. We all put a piece of our heart and soul when we make something because that's the point of art in the first place. But remember not to put our entire heart and soul out there because then it just kind of feels a bit too self-indulgent. I mean, we all know how awkward it was seeing Thomas's weird-ass self-insert episode of Miraculous Ladybug. It's never easy making something. Hell, this video took 3 months to write because I just keep getting stumped on how to write this and make it easier to follow for people to understand, you know? Art takes time and art takes practice. A fun fact actually, when I was about 18, I had someone I look up to in writing look at a bio for one of my OCs. I remember this advice they gave me, and I legit still follow it to this day. I can't get a feel for your character because you wrote a small bio. I think you should write more. What's the details of their backstory? Their personality? Maybe what they like to do outside of the events of the story. I mean, it wasn't word for word because obviously I'm not going to remember word for word because that was like years ago, but it was something to that extent. And it's that kind of advice that I want to help other people with too. Not everyone is going to have that person in their life that gives them that mind-blowing advice. So I hope I was able to be that person for you all. That'll be it for this video. I was actually inspired to make this video after rewatching my roleplay tips and tricks video, so I hope fans of that video like this one. Or the opposite, where fans of this one will like that one. As always, let me know down below what you think. Hey guys, thanks for watching! If you liked the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing if you're new. If any of you would like to help support my channel in any possible way, my Ko-fi page is down below in the description, along with all of my social media. For any subscribers, new or old, who'd like to help with video ideas, or maybe just want to talk about anime or something, I have a fan server linked down below. See you next time!